Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wine Grants, unscripted chat about the unfunded, the official podcast of the Unfunded List. I'm Dave Moss, founder of the list and host of this podcast. Welcome. I'm in a booth with two handsome gentlemen, Steve and Eugene. Eugene and I have known each other for a while. He works at the Millennial Action Project for Steve. Steve has the longest bio that I've been able to find yet. This is, in fact, the 20th episode of Wine Grants.
Wow.
Congratulations. So thank you.
It's a real honor.
Thank you very much for joining us here.
It's a real honor to be here.
This is, I think, going to be a first. I don't think I'll read your entire bio.
Excellent.
Only, that's a great gasp. Before that, though, is this my wine?
That is yours.
We'll come up with a system. Make sure I'll always be on this side.
Yeah, perfect.
We are drinking box wine this week because we are millennials. And actually, this is pretty, even though it came out of a box, it's pretty good. Stephen Olikara.
There's a little story behind the wine. Can I just quickly
please.
say?
Yes.
Yeah, so I grew up in Wisconsin and went to school in Madison. And that's the same place where I first started drinking wine. And my best buddy in college spent a year in Argentina, and he became a big winehouse. So our first wine was the Malbec from the Mendoza region of Argentina. And the best year, it just so happened that the best year, I don't think this wine is of this year, but 2008 was the best year.
It says 2014 on the box, on the side of the box here.
Yeah, also a good year. Also a good year. But
yeah, sure it is.
Fine year.
It's this wine stays fresh up to 6 weeks after opening.
Oh, very nice.
It also says that on the box.
Excellent.
You can tell it's good wine when they tell you how long it stays fresh after opening.
Very nice. So it's a good choice of wine. Thank you for giving it.
Yeah, no problem. And so Stephen Olikara, at Stephen Olikara, is a political entrepreneur, public servant, and founding president of the Millennial Action Project, MAP. MAP is a national, nonpartisan organization dedicated to activating young policymakers to overcome partisan conflict through cooperative political leadership and governance. In this role, he organized the nation's first and only bipartisan caucus for young members of Congress, the Congressional Future Caucus. Stephen's leadership of this movement at the national and state levels has led to landmark achievements advancing entrepreneurship, social impact investing, 21st century skills training for veterans, and other key issues affecting millennials in America. Stephen also serves as senior advisor to multi-platinum recording artist Akon's Lighting Africa?
Indeed.
Akon. So the artist is Lighting Africa, and it is Akon. I know who Akon is.
Akon's the artist, and it's an initiative called Akon Lighting Africa.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Very cool. I didn't know you did that. An initiative to electrify over 1 million homes in Africa with solar power. A nationally recognized leader, Stephen's work has been featured on NBC, ABC, CNN, MSNBC, Al Jazeera America, New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, National Journal, Political, USA Today, the Wine Grants podcast, and other major media outlets. I want to point out now that I am less than halfway done with your bio, Steve. As you pointed out beforehand, I don't think anybody wants to hear the rest of this. There's a lot of I see Phi Beta Kappa, Harvard, Yale, lots of really impressive looking words.
There you go.
In the second half of your bio. Obviously, you're an impressive young person. This is the most political episode of Wine Grants we've had.
Oh, excellent.
We did have one guy who runs something called the Commodia Foundation, which I should, in fact, connect you guys with them. I helped them with their launch. It's a similar mission, except they're much more focused on comedy. They want to bring people together across political lines using comedy. And he just started up his thing, and we wish him the best of luck, and had him by a couple weeks ago.
Very nice.
I think, though, when we think about nonprofits, and you guys are a 501c3 charitable nonprofit like the Salvation Army or the Red Cross or something like that, we don't really think about political work. That is sort of categorized in a different section in our heads. Both, for me, when I wear my donor hat, I do think that is something we consider separately. The foundation that I run, we're not allowed to make any political contributions, so those I can't even bring it up at those meetings. But the limitations on a 501c3 are actually kind of limited. You can't endorse. What are you not allowed to do?
Well, we're not allowed to lobby for any type of legislation, and we're not able to electioneer or get involved in any type of election, endorse any candidate, or oppose any candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we can't do.
But you can. So what can you do?
So we can, and I should clarify that to say that actually 501c3s can lobby up to, I think it's about 20% of the
Right.
time. You need to be very strict about accounting for that. But what we can do is convene and provide educational resources and do leadership development. And the traditional nonprofit, like you said, the Salvation Army that does direct services is one model, but there is a new model emerging from our generation, and that's in the social entrepreneurship mindset, which is we need to work ourselves out of a job.
Yeah.
If we're existing for 50 years, maybe there's something wrong about our model. Maybe something about the solution.
Something that a rebrand won't fix.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're not creating a sustainable model that can be institutionalized, acculturated, and in some cases even commercialized, then you're not creating real sustainable change.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good point. I think I talk in the booth here with my guests often about what I call the dinosaurs.
Right.
Basically, any nonprofit that's, I think probably if you're at the century point at this point, you really need to. I think you need to be, rather than patting yourself on the back about how prestigious you are and how well respected you are.
Right.
Think about how far have we gone in 100 years solving the problem that and obviously none of them were actually at some of these nonprofits. It's possible that some of the board members were around 100 years ago when these things were founded.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of them, it's pretty close.
But I mean, like, some of these conservation groups and stuff like that, like, the things have gotten worse
Right.
under your tenure. I have some problems with so I'm a member of the Jewish community, and we have a national nonprofit that organizes the community called Federation. They do
Right.
some good work.
Yeah, very familiar.
One of the things I would say about them is that their original problem, they solved it. They worked themselves out of job, but didn't stop working. In the original days of the Federation, one of the reasons why it was necessary, let me get the stop clock started, sorry. One of the reasons that Federation was necessary is we literally weren't allowed in hospitals, we weren't allowed in social clubs, like we were like denied basic services, so we created something that substituted those services.
Right.
Today, if you're lucky, you'll end up at a Jewish hospital if you're sick.
Yeah.
That's not really, like, I'm not worried about getting sick and then be like, oh, we don't treat Jews here. That's not, like, anti-Semitism is real. There's a lot of issues out there facing us, but the stuff that Federation was set up for, not a problem anymore. Which is why I think they often have a hard time figuring out what it is that they're doing, because their original problem doesn't exist. There's a lot of similar nonprofits about that, and I think there's a general model and mindset from the previous generations that success means getting bigger.
Right.
Not, obviously success does not mean going out of business.
Right.
And I also think that, there were more problems. Problems were a much bigger fact of life 100 years ago, and much more accepted, right? Like infant mortality. I think there was probably a lot less outrage about problems that people would absolutely not tolerate today. And so, I like, how long have you been around?
We've been around for 3 years.
And when do you think what's your plan for putting yourself out of business? How long will that take?
I think we have about a 20-year time horizon, because the millennials now, who are in their 20s and 30s, in 20 years we'll be in our 40s and 50s. That's when we will have successfully taken up the reins of government, and by then we'll see the result of our work. Either our country has been able to overcome this hyper-partisanship and dysfunction, or we'll be doomed to the same status quo that we're seeing today. And I think 20 years from now, you'll see a dramatic increase in participation and the belief that politics can make a difference.
In your first few years, what has been some of your major point? Hiring Eugene? Is that the
biggest thing?
Pointing at Eugene.
Absolutely.
That's your biggest success?
Eugene and hiring Nick, who's next door to us, those are definitely two of our biggest successes. But I know Eugene can say more about what we've been up to.
Yeah, what's some stuff that you've done, Eugene?
Oh, we've had quite a few accomplishments that have presented us with even more opportunities. I think probably the greatest success that we can affiliate with is the founding of the Future Caucus system across the country, and these are groups of young lawmakers, either at the state or federal levels, that are working across party lines to identify opportunities to break the partisan status quo, and to really usher in a new era of political cooperation. That sounds great. Functionally, what are we doing? we are.
Thank you for asking my follow-up question.
I've known you long enough. No, essentially, you know, as we're a 501c3, you know, we have no desire to influence the process of legislation, nor do we have the desire to get behind any particular candidate. We have a desire to support a new movement. And I, you know, really work with young lawmakers across the country, connect young lawmakers around the country, again, just to identify, you know, help them identify their own areas for collaboration, right? So for us, it's a very relational process. It's a very, you know, and it's a very hands-off process, almost organic. Different future caucuses in the over a dozen states that they're organized in come upon different issues and come upon different passions. And what's really exciting for us is when we can connect, you know, lawmakers across states who have parallel ideas or are working on issues from different angles and help them find ways or help them connect so they can find ways to address these problems in ways that they might not have thought of previously. So for me, that's one of the most exciting parts is watching some of the cross-pollination that occurs with legislatures, with legislators as a result of our work.
So to go back a little bit, while you are not allowed to endorse a candidate, you are allowed to work with them directly, right? And I think that's something that's worth clarifying for folks out there, especially for folks who might want to be doing similar work to you folks. I know a lot of nonprofit people who just stay completely away from both lobbying, which I would also like to talk about, and the political sphere because they have some sort of nebulous understanding that they're not allowed to do it, right? To be clear, you can't say, I think, well, I don't have a 501c3, so I'm not bound by these rules. So I'm allowed to say that I endorse Hillary Clinton for president.
Yeah.
You can't.
Right.
You can't. But as Stephen Olikara, the individual,
I can actually as an individual.
you can.
Yeah.
But not. But so how does that get that? I've never even understood that. I have a pretty good understanding of how these things work. Right now, you're here in the booth. You're obviously representing Stephen Olikara, but you're also representing the Millennial Action Project.
Right.
You can't. Can you say who? Like what are you like? Do you have to say I'm not speaking? Like do you have to turn it on and off? Like how do you stay on the right side of things?
Well, obviously I have to be careful, but in most situations, since I lead the organization, I'm representing the organization itself. So I have to be very careful, and you know, publicly I'm not endorsing anyone, but I will be voting for someone this fall, just like everyone else in this country should be. And well, you know, obviously I'm not going to talk about who that is, but I can talk about some of the values and principles that not only I, but I think our generation is looking for.
Yes, and and I think that, you know, I like the existence of your organization. We have, I believe, a very old group of elected officials. I think they might be the oldest Senate we've ever had, if it's not as close. And at a certain point, you're just a bunch of old men, and it doesn't really matter who's older. And these younger folks must have a really big disadvantage over folks that have been there on the Hill 30, 40 years. They have these big networks.
I think that's the case in any period of history in any industry ever, right? The young people are always going to have a leg down as opposed to the older generation. I think what you're seeing as far as the demographics, there's just, you know, the baby boomers, right? This is their time to shine, and shine they are. So, you know, it's just one of those things.
Godspeed, boomers. Thanks for everything.
No, with great deal of respect to the boomers who laid the foundation for the work that we're doing now, certainly. But yeah, I think that's just a function of, unfortunately, demographics. I would hope that we can usher in a few more millennials into positions of power around the country as citizens in short order.
So, but you are, as an organization, interested in seeing younger folks as elected officials.
Absolutely.
All other things being equal, you have a preference for younger elected officials. You would like to a measure of success for you would be the average age going down.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, that's a preference of ours, but programmatically, we're not setting up a PAC to help elect, you know, young people to run for office. But we certainly have a preference of that. But the reason that's important is because if you look historically, young people have always been the force that pushes our nation into the future. We have a certain moral clarity, a certain sense of what's right and wrong, and the civil rights movement was led by young people. John Lewis was 25 years old when he marched across the bridge in Selma. Dr. King was 34 when he gave the I Have a Dream, 26 when he led the Montgomery bus
Jefferson
boycott.
was 32, wrote the Declaration of Independence.
Around that age, absolutely. And Madison was also in his 20s and 30s when he did his best work. So that's been the history of this country.
Yeah. And we, I believe there are, the folks that wrote the founding documents,
Right.
considerably younger than the people currently executing them, is an interesting aspect. And there are, you pointed out that you're not setting up a PAC, to support young candidates. I'm interested when you said that. I was wondering, does that exist? Because that exists for women and for other cultural groups. I don't think there's a Jewish PAC, but maybe.
APAC.
Yeah, but they don't support.
Yeah.
I don't think they support candidates. They have their one issue. The only issue that matters to us Jews. Social justice is that I don't know what Torah you're reading. All right, that was my little APAC shade. I'm sure they're listening.
Well, yeah. First of all, I think you're making a good point. Be curious your thoughts too. I've been a big believer that there needs to be an Emily's List for millennials that is or bipartisan and supports
If there is,
people
I
on the
don't
left
know.
and the
I
right.
don't know.
There's not one. There's some that have cropped up at the local level. There's one in Philadelphia that we've been in touch with, and another that has supported others. Others have tacked kind of more towards, say, a service orientation. So there's a group called New Politics that supports service veterans in the military or in AmeriCorps to run for office, and they happen to be young, but it's a huge void out there that I think is important to fill. We knew as a startup, and I hope for the startups listening, know that when you're starting an organization, you have to focus on doing one thing really well. If you try and do a lot of things well up front, you're probably going to fail and overextend yourself.
So, this is excellent advice, everyone.
So while I personally believe there needs to be a PAC of that sort, that's not the goal of MAP, and it would be wrong and actually undermining to our mission to be having a PAC and to be trying to support candidates. The reason for that is because we think we're in the business of convening and finding common ground. And if we're supporting candidates on the left and the right, that's not only going to create a lot of financial problems, a lot of donors are going to be concerned about that. But two, I think we want cooperation for everyone who can come to the table. We had Senator Ted Cruz come to our table in the winter of 2014, and he talked for 25 minutes about working with Democrats and the importance of millennials involved in politics. So if we had a PAC, I don't know if he would be the person we're supporting, but I do think it's very important for. Well, if there was a PAC out there, I don't know.
Yeah, is it possible?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. But Millennial Action Project as a 501c3, I think it was very important and very meaningful and impactful to have Senator Cruz involved.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a supporter of the senators. I was at that event, and I was happy to see him there and hear him.
Yeah.
I vote mostly for Democrats. I have voted for Republicans in the past. The first person I ever voted for was Susan Collins.
Wow.
Who's still in the Senate.
Absolutely.
And still one of my favorites. And there was, I'm from Maine, and that was I voted for different reasons.
Right.
She was good for being senator is an actual job with you have to do things for your state. It's not just making speeches and bringing snowballs to work.
Right.
Some of the folks at home may have heard I had a brief spill.
It's all good, guys. He's got it.
It's still.
You should have seen this Matrix level stuff that he was doing there.
Probably didn't even need to bring it up.
The best part is it didn't get on your script, so fortunately the script.
No, if I wanted to finish reading your bio later, I'd be able to. And I think if you were to do that, I like you said you should, when you're starting out, find, don't try to be all things.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of folks who are starting out. Pretty much everybody who applies the Unfunded List is trying to do too much.
Interesting.
This is really common feedback we give to folks. If you can find one thing and do it well, you're going to be more successful than most people. Most people don't have one thing they do well.
Right.
I often say, think of your favorite people in your life, the people that have impacted you the most, your teachers, your mentors, things like that. Oftentimes, those people, I think, have found that to be the case. They focus on one thing, they do it well. The reason that they spent time with you is because that one thing that they were doing intersected with your life.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, for me, it's a teacher, and that person had to decide to do a very specific thing.
And think about it. Not all teachers operate on the same wavelength, but the best ones are really super focused.
Yeah, I'd also say like I had a golf coach for a while, and he's a professional golfer. It's a very niche field to get into, and because he was an expert at one thing, I think that's a lot of why he was a good mentor to me. That's a very interesting.
But if you think about it in
point.
terms of efficacy, right? Anybody can be a mentor. Anybody can give terrible advice, but the people you remember are focused.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's someone who's good at a thing is worth hearing from, right? And I'd also say if you were to go into the PAC space, that's a crowded space.
Yeah.
I think Emily's List is a successful organization. They've been around for as long as I've been in town.
Yeah.
We do not have 50% women
Yeah.
in any government body in the country, and we're not even really close.
Yeah.
And they've been doing a good job for a long time, and it's gonna be a while before they're able
Yeah.
to put themselves out of business.
That's true.
And good luck to them. I'm sure they would love.
I'm sure they would love to be out of
to
business.
put themselves out of business.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And hopefully they have new jobs lined up
Yeah.
after that. Never quit your job unless you got another one lined up. Unless you're like me.
They might
Then-
be tired, but anyway.
Then call your boss an asshole and get yourself fired.
It's the best way to do it.
If you're Dave Moss and you're listening at home, do that.
For all the Dave Mosses out there.
You mentioned before, you talked about the limits on lobbying. And I think similar to talking about politics and political candidates, folks who are starting out have a similar fear about their ability to lobby, right? And I have a mentor in town actually who's a lobbyist, Jeff Lawrence, if you're listening, hello. When I first got to town, I asked him, like, some people consider your profession unethical. What do you think of that? I ask questions like that to people. And he told me, he's like, hey, look, you read the Constitution, the very first right that's outlined in there makes it pretty clear I can petition the government. So, I think, you're obviously allowed anyone to give the First Amendment to tell an elected official,
Yeah.
you'd like to see this happen, right?
That's right.
However, lobbying, the influence peddling and stuff like that does need to be regulated.
Yeah.
Right? So does speech is also regulated. All of the amendments are regulated, even the Second Amendment. The you shouldn't be able to do like unlimited lobbying, and if you are, I think the public has the right to know how you're spending your money.
That's right.
However, the unsureness behind this causes some nonprofits that should be doing some lobbying to not do it
Yeah.
at
that's
all.
true.
We had a guest on here who runs an alliance, the Alliance for Middle East Peace, and he doesn't actually do any on-the-ground peace work. He lobbies Congress for more money for people who are doing on-the-ground peace work. And they pay him. They all pay membership dues so that he can be a lobbyist for them.
Nice.
Right? And one of the things he pointed out to me on the show is, as a lobbyist, he doesn't just compete against people who don't want peace. He competes against Coca-Cola and Boeing
That's right.
and every single person that's trying to get the attention of our elected officials. And those people have huge staffs of well-paid lobbyists who know exactly what they're doing.
That's right.
And if you don't even show up on the field, you're definitely not going to beat them.
Yeah.
Do you guys do any sort of, you're on the Hill and interacting with these folks and in a position, I think, and again, you don't have to, I'm not saying you should support like specific legislation or whatever, but there might be things out there you could lobby on behalf of. Is that is it work you're doing currently?
Not quite.
You're aware
So-
of the 20% figure, which puts you ahead of
Right.
most people.
Exactly. Well, first of all, I think it's important to distinguish between corporate lobbyists and public interest lobbyists.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I have no problem with the Environmental Defense Fund having a lobbyist, or World Wildlife Fund, or any NGO.
They're going to need to. How would they?
Yeah.
They can't. How would they do their work?
And it speaks to the other point you were bringing up earlier about philanthropists who don't want to get political, because if you're not getting political, what kind of change are you really making? I'm so tired of hearing social entrepreneurs who say, I want to work myself out of a job, I want to scale my solution, I want to create systemic change, but I want nothing to do with politics. What are they talking about? Because there's nothing that scales a solution like public policy. Nothing better than that. And
case in point, today, I believe the Justice Department banned we're not going to have private prisons in the U.S. anymore.
Wow.
I don't know if you...
13 prisons,
I didn't read-
specific department, but I think it's an amazing step.
That's something that, like, without lobbying and interacting directly with the government, no nonprofit's ever going to accomplish that because the Justice Department's the only one that can shut them down.
Absolutely.
They probably were lobbied, and whichever nonprofit successfully got that moved forward, and the people who made Orange is the New Black or whatever.
Yeah.
I think the media probably did have a part to play in that.
They always do.
I'll have to read more. Thank you for. I'm sure I knew it was tempered in some way. It seemed like too good to be true.
Now here's the thing. There are a lot of public interest lobbyists who are advocating for the environment or for closing private prisons who run into another problem, which is that Congress isn't moving. Our democracy doesn't work well. It's corrupted. It's gridlocked. And that's where we come in, because we think the process itself is distorted and dysfunctional. And that's why it's important for us to kind of layer on with those issue-specific public interest groups so that they can achieve bipartisan reform on criminal justice, on immigration, on climate change, on all of those issues, which aren't getting nearly enough attention and progress that they should be getting. One of the issues that got me into this in the first place was the issue of climate change. I was working on that Senate cap and trade bill in 2010, which famously failed even after the BP oil spill. And internationally, it became clear that we would not make progress if not for U.S. leadership on climate, because we're the second largest polluter and historically the largest polluter. So the solution after 2009, 2010 couldn't have been to elect more Democrats, because we had the largest majority of Democrats that we will see likely in our lifetime. The solution can only be, how do we create the structures, the relationships, the institutions for bipartisan consensus to occur on climate change and other issues, and that's why we got started.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think when it comes to lobbying, if you break things down, and I come from a small town in Pennsylvania, you know, and I think even if you look back to
Lancaster's not so small.
You know, well, New Holland is home of the New Holland
from New
Tractor,
Holland.
ladies and gentlemen.
I forgot about that.
No, but this is to say, like, you know, growing up in a small town, I realized that the sheriff knows the mayor, and the mayor knows the doctor, and the doctor knows the merchant, and they're all going to collude on where to place
If one
property.
of them knows something, the rest of them will know it.
I understand that. So I think that's part of the human condition. We can call it whatever we want. But at a certain point, I think the reason lobbying has such a dirty word in this country is because it really just implies hand-holding of otherwise very smart people who are otherwise very capable of creating solutions. And I think the reason why I personally come to work every day very excited to work for MAP is because we're creating a space where lawmakers can devise their own solutions as smart people, as accomplished people, hopefully. And, you know, if we can create that space, I think the ideas that are going to come out of those conversations are going to have a much longer shelf life than some of the things that we kind of ram down their throats in D.C. There's a time and a place for everything, but I think MAC can be very complimentary to that.
Indeed. All very good. As to, so obviously you need funds to operate.
Right.
And do I assume correctly that there are people who donate these funds to you?
There are people.
Are these, and if the higher level of detail, the better, but don't betray any confidences on my behalf. But like the people who donate to you, you know, what are they typically political donors? Are they more philanthropy folks? Like, what is the reason behind, and what's your strategy for, you know, getting the dollars out of them?
It's a good question. Most of our so we have a combination of institutional funders, individual donors, and to a very, very small percent, mostly for specific events or conferences, we'll have a corporate sponsor, like Google actually hosted an event for us recently.
Cool.
But for the most part, individual donors and institutions. And for the individual donors, which I think you're mostly asking about, some of them have been interested in politics, some have given political contributions. Some are involved with think tanks in town, like, you know, whether it's the American Enterprise Institute or Brookings. Their interest more is in deliberative policymaking and thoughtfulness, which they feel like has been lost from the system.
What would make them feel that?
Yeah. And others haven't. And I think the biggest motivation to give is, one, for a startup, they more than anything else, more than your programming, even more than your mission, is the leadership involved, the people and the talent. If they feel like this is a talented group and you've built a relationship with them, then that's going to get some of your first checks. And then after that, you have to show a certain record of success. And then after that, you have to show some real plans for scale. And it's been so helpful for us to have our political system just deteriorate and degrade over the past few years. Because
I hadn't thought about that, but now that you say, yeah, that must be really helpful. Yeah,
it is helpful.
Every time, like, especially, I mean, some of the stuff last year with, when the government was actually shut down. That, I mean, I assume that was just someone probably said the word bonanza at some point in one of your development meetings.
Big bucks, no whammies.
Had I thought of that word, I would have
It's
said
on
it,
one of the after. It's actually that was that was not a good joke actually, because there's after Hurricane Sandy, one of the Red Cross fundraisers got caught on tape saying that it was going to be a bonanza for them.
Wow.
Like it was still like people were still like the hurricane was still happening.
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, this is.
And he was right. They raised a lot of money, so why should I make fun of him?
I would just say this moment in politics we think was predictable, because in 2011, 2012, when we were getting this organization off the ground and having the earliest conversations, it was clear that we were on track for a collision between the worsening gridlock and polarization with a new generation, the millennials, who are impatient and change-oriented. That collision is happening right now, and that's an opportunity for us, and that's why we exist. But we knew, I mean, if you just looked at the trends, the existence of this election, where we're talking about a very divisive electorate and conversation, was utterly predictable, and in many ways,
only a matter of time, really.
It was only a matter of time. The government shutdown in 2013 was just the beginning of things.
It's a prelude.
It was just a prelude of things to come, and we felt actually back in 2012, 2013 that MAP was maybe a little bit ahead of the times, and then now this year it's
sort of the times have caught up.
The times have come.
Well, 2016 has proven to defy all expectations in all industries. That's for sure.
I think as a and again, there are Republicans I support, and even though I mostly lean Democrat, I don't think everybody should be. You need people who disagree with you, or it makes your ideas better. It's really important to have at least two sides to arguments, if possible more than two sides, but at least two sides. I think, though, you're right. It's a really big generational difference.
Yeah.
The generations before us, and all generations have a tendency towards tribalism. It's actually part of the reason why we defeated Neanderthal man, because we got into tribes better than we organized ourselves better into little groups.
Yeah.
And we, especially in politics, got to the point where we were willing to voraciously support unsupportable ideas in the name of our tribe. And this is something that, I mean, climate change is a really great example. It's hard. It's a strange credulity to think that every single Republican member of Congress and the Senate actually believes climate change is a hoax. As you said, some of these people are smart, went to college, know how to read. But their willingness to support the unsupportable superseded their need to say things that made sense.
And I think
there are things on the GMOs are a pretty good example. There's some anti-science stuff on every. And I was just talking. I mean, I think there's lots of things that libertarians say that make sense. There's things that Jill Stein says that make sense to me until she starts talking about crystals.
Look, I mean, millennials are
she thinks crystals are magic and can heal disease.
Crystals, they exist. That's a fact.
Yep, I've seen them.
No, but I mean, and Dave, I'm sure to a majority of your listeners, this will come as no surprise, but millennials are just increasingly identifying as having no party, right? I mean, when it comes to this notion of tribalism as generations, I think the internet's really broken through that, and for the first time in human history, you see people that have over a dozen tribal affiliations, be that to brands or local civic organizations or political movements. I mean, we are increasingly diversifying our tribalism. I don't think it's ever going to go away. We're a social species. We need it to survive. But I think it really has the potential to do wonders for American politics, and has the potential to really be transformative in saying, look, I'm not bound by this T or this R or this blue or this red. We're a purple generation, and that's, we can come out on very clearly on X issue or Y issue, sure, but that doesn't paint an entire political picture. And I think that's important to remember when you're talking about millennials.
Yes, and in fact there is, and one thing I want to on the generation question, I've heard from some people that so if you're in college right now, are you a millennial?
You're on the tail end.
Yeah, you're on the tail
So
end.
are there people alive now who aren't?
This is why it would be helpful to have a unifying body that decided on generational cutoffs, because these things just don't exist.
Yeah, I mean the generation after Gen Z is.
That's what we're.
Yeah. We're Gen
I
Y,
remember.
and there's Gen Z.
I remember a time when there was no millennial wasn't a word.
Yeah.
We were Generation Y.
Yeah.
I remember it was everywhere I went.
The
they were
letters are
calling me
just
Generation Y.
placeholders.
So I assume it'll be Generation Z for now, and then
Right.
eventually we'll come
Until
up
they
with.
invent the next Snapchat.
Absolutely.
Then they'll call them that.
Yeah.
I call them tweeners.
Okay.
Until that works.
But
for
I
now.
don't know how I would feel as a tweener.
Eventually, are
If
you?
I wasn't, no, I'm not a tweener, but I don't
You're
know
a
how I would
millennial.
feel about.
I don't even think I think I might be too old.
You're a millennial.
And then what am I?
Are you on the
All
cusp?
millennials are old. That's the sad news that we're
Let's
hoping
say
to break here.
hypothetically, I was born in the 70s. Am I a
Really?
millennial?
Wow, you look
The
young
late
for your
70s.
age.
The late. Thank you.
The beard is really
Young for
the
it.
beard
Yeah.
is confused me.
I think but what I don't even know. I literally don't even know what my generation's called. Can you guys help me?
You're very clearly a millennial, but I mean that's the thing.
I identify as one,
Yeah.
and I think values wise, and I go to the meetings.
Yeah, we host the secret.
I've been to a
meetings here-
Future Caucus event.
here
I think
at the,
Don't tell them about the meetings.
yeah, here at the lookup.
I also go
This
to
is
the
where we-
Jew meetings.
Yeah.
Those are the meetings that you guys won't be able to attend. I'm sorry.
Oh, I attend them.
Oh, you've
I'm
been?
Very, I'm very
Oh, you've
plugged
been?
into the
You've
Jewish
been?
community.
Yeah.
My mother's mother's mother.
Oh yeah.
Depends on
Very
who you
pleasant,
ask, but I guess
absolutely.
I have a little calling in the tribe.
You should get tested for Tay-Sachs. You could have it.
You never know. I could have a lot of
It's
things.
very painful, as I understand. I had a cousin.
I'm very pain averse. I don't know.
You know, speaking of millennials, one thing I find fascinating is how people have a variety of opinions on generational theory. Like, does it really exist? And when you travel, I'm sure you've traveled abroad a lot, and you meet millennials in other countries, and you realize that there actually are a lot of similarities. You realize that millennials, say, in Egypt or India, in a number of places, have been watching Western media. They have ideas about democracy, and they want free and self-expression. And that's coming into conflict with centuries-old political institutions. And I just find that really fascinating from a kind of generational standpoint. I think it's validation that there is some distinguishing points from generation to generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely true. My father is a cultural historian, and his big criticism of the generational talk is that he would say that millennials and Generation Z, for instance, there's no real, in terms of historical perspective, there's really no difference.
Yeah.
Right? And in fact, between boomers and millennials, there really isn't.
That's true.
Like,
From that,
if you're going to look at the whole realm of all of human history,
Absolutely.
like, there's really not a difference, right? But
Right.
but there are slow shifts, just like with climate change, right? You can go to a mountain 50 years ago, and there have been changes in those 50 years, but you're not going to be able to see them,
Right.
I think we've been blessed, and particularly I actually got to see it unfold before my eyes. Some pretty radical technology came out while I was quite young.
I'd say we're the first generation to really span analog and digital, for sure. And I think it positions us uniquely to be that bridge.
Yeah, my first internet when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And my first email address.
But you still remember recording songs off the radio, which places you.
I recorded songs onto a tape.
As did a lot of
the
millennials.
radio.
And so
A lot.
And I think
lot.
It's so
I
superficial.
did that every day.
But I think that illustrates our generation perfectly. We are the bridge generation.
You know how much harder that is than downloading a song? I remember downloading
It takes dedication.
I downloading my first freshman year of college, downloading my first Napster song.
What was that?
Oh, it's gonna be embarrassing.
You got to say
You
it.
got to
what
say
it
it.
is.
I'll tell you mine.
The real Slim Shady.
It was the thong song.
I was close. That's pretty close.
It was definitely. I remember I was at college, and I was like, I want to blast something, and It was definitely, you know, you're not too
Oh yeah,
young
absolutely.
for that, right?
First two MP3s I remember clearly. Semi-Charmed Kind of Life, and a song from the South Park movie, which
Oh.
I cannot repeat on air.
You know, speaking of thongs, I think
Is
this
it Uncle?
good...
Is it Uncle Fucker?
Perhaps, but speaking, I really want to say.
It's my show. I can say Uncle Fucker if I want.
I was 11. I wasn't even allowed to download that.
The end of most episodes of Wine Grants tend to deteriorate. Our regular listeners, this will not come as much
I was
as
just
long
about to
departed.
transition to bring in
yeah.
Nick,
If you, I wanted to
we
say,
gotta bring in
if you wanted to bring someone in to say something serious
on
about your
the topic
organization,
of thongs here.
now would be a good time.
Yeah, here we go.
There you go. Look at you. He knows
This
how to
booth
unlock
is super
doors.
secure.
Yeah, it's a good.
Say if you think about thongs.
I'm digging this air that came through.
Bringing in
The
some,
thong song right
bringing
now.
in some relief.
First song's downloaded on Napster.
I can't hang, y'all.
Yeah.
Wait, you're not saying it? Okay, go on.
Bring it in. Bring it on in. Now we just have friends that join
Nick?
us.
Yeah.
Welcome to the booth, Nick. Nick
Thank
here.
you.
Nick, you work? Do you work at MAP?
I do. I'm
is
playing
your
an interim COO role.
Interim
Yeah.
COO. That's
Correct.
interesting.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
My title is director of operations at a nonprofit a while ago, and I think people call it the number 2 man. I've heard people say like I'm an ops guy, right?
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
I think especially for your visionary founders out there, it's really
Yeah.
important to find
Yep.
somebody.
Yep.
You want to talk a little bit about your philosophy behind being an ops guy? Or
Sure.
how
Well,
you talk about
and I probably should confess I'm actually not an ops guy by training. I think Steven and I have been working together kind of informally for over a year now, and so the opportunity arose to kind of play a more day-to-day hands-on role with him in the organization at the moment. So I was glad to step in. But I think what I sit as board chair in another local nonprofit called Project Create, which is a DC-based arts organization. So, have the ability to, I guess, come at the job from a couple of angles. One is just in the role, seeing what we need to do to build good systems and processes. We're in the middle of a bit of a hiring push right now, getting the right people in the right chairs to be able to deliver the work. And then measure that work and get more funding to do more work. So that's a big part of it. But also thinking about it from a governance perspective, as board chair, what makes for a strong operation that allows the principal, in this case Steven, to do the things that a founder and president should really focus their time on. Certain things that really only a founder can do and do well, whether that's go out and ask for money, to really be the face and the voice of the organization. And so a lot of what we're talking about right now at MAP is how do we optimize the team's portfolios and make sure that Steven's got the ability to balance out his time in a way that makes the most difference.
That's very good. I like to compare startup nonprofits to the Israelites
Okay.
This is going to be great.
fleeing
Okay.
Egypt.
All right.
Love it.
If you've seen the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston, I think they did generally a disservice to the study of leadership in America by presenting Moses as this charismatic leader who ran everything. If you read Torah closely, you'll see actually that Moses had a stutter and no one liked him. He was really rude, right? And particularly, and when it came time for someone to be an asshole to Pharaoh, they had the right guy, right?
Yeah.
Every now and then you need someone to go out there and be an asshole.
Yeah.
He also had a vision,
Yeah.
right?
True.
God was speaking to him,
Focused.
and he knew a focused vision. He knew
Yeah.
exactly where he wanted his team to go. What he couldn't do was explain that in a way that ingratiated that vision to anyone else.
Yeah.
No one liked hearing him talk,
Yeah.
right? He was lucky though. He had a friend Joshua and a friend Joshua and a brother Aaron, possibly a friend Aaron and a brother Joshua and a sister Miriam. And these are the leadership styles that we don't hear about.
Okay.
Everybody's aware of the charismatic leader who can
Sure.
do everything.
Sure.
That's not a real thing.
Sure.
That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
He's not out there.
Yeah.
You're never gonna find him.
Yep.
Everyone has stuff they can't do. Everyone has blind spots. Everyone has faults, right? Aaron ran the camp. He made sure everybody was fed, made sure that things got packed up properly, logistics. He was the COO, right? Joshua did not have a stutter, was able to speak multiple languages. He could convince people of his brother's vision. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing. This is why you need to join us, right? And then there was Miriam, who played the tambourine in the camp. Made everybody in the camp, and she made sure there's a fire. She made sure that people in the camp were well fed, right? Made sure that the morale was up in the camp. I think that's actually one of the more underrated
Yeah.
leadership forms that exist. You could call these the COO, the CMO, the CEO, and the HR director, or the personhood director,
Program coordinator.
Perhaps the program coordinator.
I'm kidding.
Is that your title? Program coordinator. Very,
Indeed, yeah.
very prestigious.
Hey, look, someone's got to sail the
Yeah,
ship
someone
while
knows-
someone charts the course, you know?
And what you're doing is a form of leadership too, right? In that camp, there was somebody
100%.
at the front of the camp, right, who saw things before everybody else and who made decisions. Like there are multiple types of leaders that we have to have, and this is a mistake that a lot of folks start in the nonprofit out. They think they got to be all four of those folks, and they can't. The best thing you can do is find three people who have those three skill sets. Would you say you're a little bit of a Miriam? A little Miriam?
I feel, honestly, I feel like a little bit between Miriam and Joshua. I love communicating messages, but really my happiest, my best life is macro level, making things happen. I'm making sure all the pieces fit and the machine is greased. Whatever analogy you want to use, I'm behind it. No, I would say I'm a mix.
And there are lots of folks, founders especially, who when they're hiring, when they're staffing up, they talk about how they want to free themselves up.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting conversation. I have seen folks say that because basically they don't like doing work, and they don't want to do work anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Other times but there is, like, if we can make it possible for Steve to be 100% of the time talking to money bags that want to support the organization,
Right.
that is something you should do.
Yep.
He should be in rooms,
But also telling the story. Also
telling the story
he's-
to money bags that can support the organization.
Sure.
But it's just the general population too.
If any of those, if Mr. Moneybags, if you're listening this week,
yeah, we could really
consider
use your help.
supporting. Is there a donate button prominently featured on your
There is.
website?
We
Very
are.
prominent. You can also.
We're enabled for that.
I don't know if you're interested, but your listeners can actually sign up for a newsletter.
Oh, good.
So just something to throw out.
My
there.
listeners they fucking love newsletters, Eugene.
We've got plenty of news to letter.
They're going nuts. I can tell they're all at home right now. They're like, God, I'm glad I listened to the end.
Listen, just scroll down. That's all I gotta say.
All right, I think we've probably exhausted the topic. It's been a pleasure to have the MAP folks by. Support the stuff that you're doing. If you guys have a unfunded proposal you want to send along, our deadline is October 15th. We'd be happy to look it over.
Cheers.
You already know a lot of the folks on the evaluation committee, but some of them you don't. We'll try to be as helpful as possible. Obviously, the government controls the country, basically, and so the work you're doing is pretty important, no matter what you consider to be important. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you, Steve, who hopefully is listening in the other room now.
What's up, Steve?
This is the first time that the guest whose bio I read wasn't actually in the booth at
the
the end of
close.
the podcast. We're setting a whole
Well,
lot.
you always keep your guests on your toes. We figure we try
That's
and keep
why
you
they
on
keep
your
coming
toes.
back. That's why they keep coming back to listen.
No, we just figure we keep you on your toes. Switch it up a little bit. You know?
Well, oh, yeah. As always, I want to thank the Lookout DC, which is a beautiful co-working space for filmmakers and other creative professionals located in the Adams-Morgan district of Washington, D.C. I want to thank my guests.